Well, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you.
Excited you're here. Would you like to introduce yourself and we'll get started there?
Yes, my name is Angel Hussain, and I am the owner of Angel's Island Coffee.
Awesome. So we were talking a little bit about it off air, but I am blown away, and we'll probably get into it more in a second. But Angel's Island's been open going on 18 years.
Yes.
Opened in 2007 in January.
Yep.
Before we kind of dive into that, so I know you're originally from Huntsville. You kind of call
Right.
Huntsville home.
Right.
But prior to starting Angel's Island, you were in Fiji for 10, 11 years.
Yeah.
Talk a little bit about going to Fiji and kind of, I guess, finding out a little bit about coffee and then bringing that back.
Okay. So when we were living in Fiji, we were a missionary family, and I was 8 when I moved there. And when I was about 15, 16, my dad was like, hey, if you want to volunteer at like a place, a restaurant or a coffee shop, like you can't get paid because like we were on, a visa for missionary work. So I went to a coffee shop called Kahawa.
Okay.
And the owner was 18 when she opened her first store.
Wow.
And so that to me was inspiring. And so when I kind of went to her and was like, hey, can I help out? And she was like, sure.
Wow.
So she ended up opening 5. And that
in
was
Fiji.
in Fiji.
Wow.
Yes. And that was just super inspiring to me. But funny enough, I didn't love coffee. But in Fiji, like the coffee shops are so much different than they are here in America. It's like it's a lunch place, it's a meeting place, it's somewhere where you can go as a family, and it's not just for coffee drinkers. And that's something that really intrigued me. I was like, Huntsville doesn't have that at all. And so I was like, this might be really, really fun because I had a blast. I worked there about 2.5 years.
Wow. And so you were there from about 8, and I guess you came back to Huntsville, you're around 19, 20?
Yep, 19. Mm-hmm.
Okay. And so you come back to Huntsville, you've seen that coffee scene in Fiji, you've loved it. You love the experience you've had, the concepts they had. Talk about what coffee looked like a couple of years prior to, because you started Angel's Island at 23, so you were super young when you started. You opened up Angel's Island, but prior to that, you obviously kind of got into the coffee scene because of Fiji. What did it look like here in Huntsville, as far as where you could go, maybe get third wave coffee, or not necessarily the typical Starbucks or Dunkin'?
So actually, when I came back to America, I was in Arkansas for 2 years. I went to community college there. It did not work out very well. And at that time, my parents were still in Fiji.
Okay.
And so I was like, I either want to do hair or a coffee shop. And my parents knew that was like both of my goals.
Yeah.
So they moved back to Huntsville, and they were like, hey, if you really want to do this coffee shop, you're going to have to move back here so we can help you figure it out.
Yeah.
So I moved back to Huntsville.
So you already had the idea of doing a coffee shop at 20 or so, I guess? Like, you were in community college, you were like, this isn't working out?
Well, it was actually before that.
Before
leaving Fiji, like, my parents were like, what do you want to go to school for? What do you
You're like,
I
just want to open a coffee shop.
So I went to community college for the business. And I was like, yawn, this is really boring.
This is not for me. I just want to jump into it and I just want to try it. Like I think and you probably figured out over the last 17 years that like there's only so much you can learn from being in the school learning about business.
Yeah.
There's a lot you can learn when you open a business.
Exactly.
So I guess you were just like, school's not for me. Let me move back to Huntsville. And you moved back to Huntsville, was it like a year or two before you started, or right around the time you started?
I think it was about 2 years before, because I, at that point, I was working 2 jobs. I was working at Tuesday morning for half of the day, and the other half of the day I worked at Atlanta Bread.
Okay.
And the owners of Atlanta Bread, David and Cheryl, they are just the sweetest. They knew my dream, and they were like, if you need any help, like we can help you. So it was really cool to be able to learn. Any job that I ever worked at, I was absorbing the good and the bad. Because when I lived in Arkansas, I worked at a movie theater with a bow tie, worked at Sonic. I did not get on rollerblades. No, thank you. And I just realized, okay, there was one manager that said, do as I say, not as I do. And I was like, this is so wrong. I was like, when I open my store, I want it to be a safe place. So I just started absorbing all the things that I could learn from any place that I worked at, so that I could figure out how to put that into my coffee shop.
Yeah, because I mean, even though like a lot of the businesses you worked at, though, were different than opening up a coffee shop.
Exactly.
I mean, business is business at some point. Like being a good business owner, being a good boss, being a good employee, it's kind of unanimous across the board. And that work experience and the work environment can really make or break. And I would say, I mean, for being around 17 years, I would say
Yeah.
it's definitely made Angels Island what it is today.
Yeah, exactly. And I did get to dabble a little bit into coffee when I worked at Atlanta Bread because they had an espresso machine. You know, we had sandwiches, you know, bakery goods. So I had a good fun time with me and some other baristas, like having our own little latte art throwdown and trying to see which one is better.
Before it was like a trend.
Right. Yeah.
So, I mean, in 2007, coffee, like, there really wasn't, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but was there really any other coffee shops around at the time when you opened?
Old Town was
Still okay.
there, but I never really understood like very much about it. It was just kind of like really small. It was a staple of Huntsville. Then there were Starbucks. Funny, I actually did apply at Starbucks in between jobs, you know, trying to make some money. I did not get hired.
And then went on to open your own coffee shop.
Did. Yes. Yeah, I was really bummed, but I was like, whatever.
Yeah, because I mean, even at that time, there wasn't many. I mean, now there's Starbucks everywhere in town.
Yeah.
But I remember when the first Starbucks opened. The first one with the drive-through was a huge day in Huntsville.
It really was.
It was the one out there where Gander Mountain used to be on Maston Lake.
Yep.
And when it opened, it was like the biggest thing that happened in Huntsville ever. Oh, we have a Starbucks and it has a drive-through.
Yes.
And now it's
they lock you in the drive-through too.
And now I feel like there's probably half a dozen Starbucks that have opened in the last year.
Yeah.
Since the beginning of 2024, we've probably seen half a dozen open. And there's probably another 2 or 3. I mean, there's one on Clinton about to open. The one in front of Publix on South Parkway just opened. So you just have all of this. And like to envision that now, but then in 2007, I mean, it really wasn't that. So you get this concept, you're ready to open. Was there other spaces that you were looking at before the space you have now, or is that kind of the primary location?
No, my dad and I looked at quite a few other places, like
South Huntsville, or was it all around? I mean,
the prime place that we really, really wanted was right where that bank next to Redstone. It's orange. I can't remember. So it's a
bank next to. Okay.
Yeah. Yes. So there used to be an old Shoney's there.
Oh, wow.
Yes. Really, really old school. And so it was like for sale or lease. And so every time my dad and I drove by, we're like, that might be a really good spot.
Yeah.
When we would call a realtor or have somebody look into it, then the person, whoever it was like, they're not going to sell it.
Yeah.
And so then it would go back up and then we would contact again. They're like, no, sorry, somebody's already buying it. So it was just kind of confusing. A God thing. Yeah. You know, it was like, okay, this is not where we're supposed to be. That side of the street would be ideal. But the cleaners kind of came up out of nowhere and it was in our neighborhood area and the owners were selling it for really, really good. Like they just wanted to be done with it because they were the owners of like the whole Rosie's complex.
Gotcha.
So they were just like, we're done.
I don't need this anymore, like whatever. And then you were able to get it. I mean, probably now, I mean, in hindsight then, the real estate market versus now, I mean, it's it's insane what Huntsville's become.
Right.
So you get this space. What was that build out process like to go from a cleaners to then, make it a coffee shop? And there's probably been iterations over the years where you've, updated this, fixed this, changed this. But what did that initial, you get the space and you're ready to, and you're excited, you're ready to start opening it up. What was that process like in time frame from getting it to actually opening the doors?
So my dad and I did, and some friends did most of the demo ourselves, which was really fun. I would say if you come into my coffee shop, you'll notice that the first section of our tile is the original tile. It's like green.
Over by the window.
Yes. And the front door. So it's really, really neat because it's like, oh, that was the original, but we also were trying to save money. So
you're like, I just want to stop. I'll just stop here.
We'll just make it like sand and, grass, area.
Very artsy. It's we actually meant for this to happen.
Right. Yeah. So that took, I want to say, the whole process probably 8 to 9 months.
Okay, so you got it probably
sometime
March
in the springtime. Sometime in the springtime, and we were doing all the demo. And then my brother actually moved back, and so he was part of the contracting company, and so he started to help building it. And the cool thing is, my grandfather, before he passed, he was an engineer. Okay, so he did all the drawings back in the day for the actual building and the build out.
Wow.
Back then, I was very young, so I didn't really know what this meant or that meant.
Yeah, you're like, okay, that sounds good.
Yeah, sounds great.
Looks great.
I mean, in hindsight, now I sure would change a few things.
Really? Okay.
It's just a little tight back there behind the counter.
Yeah.
But all in all, it was so much fun. And the cool thing about it is my dad really instilled in me in an early age, like, yes, you want it to look like maybe what it looks like now, 17 years later. But financially, let's just do one thing at a time. And
let's get it to
literally,
here first and let's open, and
exactly.
then let's have this next iteration in 3
Right.
years, next iteration in another 3 years.
Yeah. It was the biggest thing, because our 3 motto words are like coffee, community, and connection. And one thing my dad said is, let the coffee shop grow and the customers grow with our change. So, I mean, our biggest purchase in the very beginning was an acrylic pastry case. And that was $50.
Wow.
And my dad is very, very good with money, and he's like pinching all the, coins. And we have weathered through so much. I mean, I think a year or 2 later, the oil spill happened, and, jobs were getting lost left, right, and center. And we were still going. Like, the coffee shop was rolling in. And even though people were financially tight, they needed coffee. Yeah. They still kept coming in there. Yeah.
They still needed their morning caffeine or their afternoon cup of coffee.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you opened the door, and it seemed like the community element of the business started off pretty strong.
Yeah.
And it's obviously kind of continued to propel you over the last 17 years. Yeah. As you've grown the business, and you started at 23 and you've seen this business continue to grow, how much of your time, and like, what does your day-to-day operations look like now versus maybe what it looked like in that first 5 years?
So, for the first 2.5 years, I worked open to close.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it was a lot. And I didn't get paid.
And you were open probably 7 to...
6 to 10.
Wow.
Yeah,
okay.
We wanted to be the only coffee shop in Huntsville that stayed open later, but then it was hard to change our hours after that. Praise the Lord for COVID during that time, because we backed it down to 8 o'clock.
Yeah.
And that's
been a good sweet spot.
It's been fantastic. Super fantastic. But yeah, I worked open and close. So I really got to know all the customers, and the busyness was clearly, we weren't too busy. It was slow enough that I could watch some TV shows sometimes on my laptop. And, when the customers came in, like, I knew them. Like, it's very interesting now to see little kids that used to come through the drive-thru or used to help me wipe off tables because they felt really cool.
Yeah.
That they have like kids now. And they're like married now. And I'm like, this is so weird.
This is crazy.
Yeah.
And then I would assume too, I mean, like I said, these customers that you started serving in 2007 that you still get to see today. And there's probably been some that's moved away and maybe come back to visit family, and you get to see them every once in a while. But that was your first 2 years, was open to close.
Open to close.
And you were open 7 days a week?
6 days.
6 days, okay.
So the only reprieve that I got in the beginning was that we closed early. My dad was a preacher. And so we would close early on Wednesdays for church to give anybody, during the time when we would hire people, some opportunity to go to church.
Yeah.
So funny, I love to tell this story. We couldn't afford an employee. And I had this sweet girl come to my store, and she's like, I really want to work here. I was like, I can't afford you. And so back then we used to have the median. I don't know if you go back and look at like old pictures of the Parkway, there was median there.
Yeah.
And we said, hey, during 5 o'clock traffic, if you go out there, hold a sign and be like sandwiches, drinks, like just start trying to bring in traffic. We will teach you how to make coffee. And then if we get busier and busier, we can afford you.
Okay.
She was our first employee, and we were still in contact. I just recently saw her in Asheville. That's where she lives now. But that was really fun to just see everybody who still remembers her, like from back in the day.
Like in the middle of the Parkway.
Yeah. She was right outside. She had the best smile. I mean, she did cause a couple wrecks. Just, some boys trying to honk at her.
Little distracting, but it worked.
A little bit. Yes, it did. But that was really fun. Like, that is the hustle that we had back in the day. And she did really good with coffee.
Yeah. And then how did that, I mean, obviously I know growing up in South Huntsville, the overpass was a great thing, but also some of the businesses that, needed the visibility from traffic to be able to be supported. Some of them closed over the years. How did that affect Angels Island when that went up, and has that affected you since?
So before we actually made the final decision to purchase the building, my dad and I went to some office here downtown. I'm not sure. And they showed us the plans of the next 5 and 10 years of what they were going to do. And so we knew the overpass was coming, but we really didn't think it would come that soon. So we were like, we're just gonna.
It'll be okay.
It'll be okay. We're gonna grow it, and I mean, it really wasn't right away, which was helpful.
Yeah.
We started getting a really good base of customers, so that when the overpass did come, that was the other kind of stumbling block that we had to go through. We almost went under. That was the
Okay.
first year that I confidently said without crying, I think we might have to close by the end of the year. Like
Wow.
that's how rough and tough
And
it
that was like
was.
2010, 11. I'm trying to
I
remember.
don't really have no idea. I
'Cause
just it was rough, and we were on the news a lot, you know, any
talking
news can.
about, yeah.
Yeah, if somebody was like, "Hey, you want to talk on the news?" Sure, absolutely.
Yes, please come buy
Yes,
coffee.
sure. But like financially, it was really rough. But we were able to get out of the hole, and I would say a couple of years later, we were back on top and still growing a little bit, you know, little by little. But you know, a lot of people are like, "I bet COVID really hurt you." I'm like, "No, it didn't.
Really?
It helped us grow." Like
Yeah.
people had all the time in the world, or they were like, "I've always wanted to go there."
Yeah.
The line was dangerously on the side road, about 5 or 6 people deep on the road, not
Wow.
including who were in the driveway.
And I think that's what's unique about COVID is that though though there was a fair amount of businesses that did close during COVID because of just not being able to make it through,
Yeah.
the businesses that did make it through almost did see an uptick. I've
Yeah.
talked to a lot of them that, you know, like as obviously when it first happened, it was definitely kind of like, how do I navigate this?
Exactly.
But then
Yeah.
once you kind of figured out like, hey, this is what I can do, this is what I can't do, this is what is
Right.
expected, and then that new norm kind of happened,
Mhm.
a lot of people started seeing an uptick. So I think people, like you said, like they had a list of these coffee shops or a list of these small businesses that they've always
Yeah.
wanted to visit, but they never got the opportunity to, never had the chance to, never had the
Mhm.
time to.
Mhm.
And now they work from home, they live down the street, they live
Yep.
behind the neighborhood,
Mhm.
they live, you know, wherever it might be, and or they don't even live nearby, but now they have the time, all the time in the world to
Right.
drive around, visit
Exactly.
places, order online,
Yep.
and become this new norm of like, oh, if I'm at home, I go to Angels. Oh, there's this other coffee shop by my office that I've never tried. Let me try that.
Mhm. Yep.
Oh, there's this restaurant I've never been to. I wonder if it's good. And like
Yeah.
now they've obviously you've probably seen over the last year or two now since COVID, this continued growth of just more and more people and some new faces that you never seen before.
Yeah, that is the most intriguing thing about the coffee shop right now is every day we're meeting 3 to 5 new customers. Like it's the most exciting thing. As
Wow.
soon as we always say,
And
"Hey,
it's
do
their
you want?"
first time there?
It's their first time, and
Wow.
we figure that out by the way that they order, you know, or
Mm.
the way they're looking at the menu. And we also really know our customers. Like
Yeah.
we see them, we're like, "Oh, that's a new person potentially."
Yeah.
But when we ask them if they want a drink punch card, because we still have old school drink punch cards,
That's
you get a
awesome.
free one after it's full. When we ask them that, they're like, "Oh, I've never been here before." And so then
Then
we're
it's
like,
like, check, got
"Yes,
it. And
it's
it,
wonderful."
yeah.
And so, and then they become a repeat customer, and it's just so much fun.
Yeah, and how do you think over the last few years, I mean, probably since COVID or a little bit before COVID, I would say probably 2019-ish, coffee shops have become there's been a huge influx of local coffee shops.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yep.
I mean, I think Honest opened in 2017.
Mhm.
We had, I guess, before Honest, there was the one at Low Mill where Dragon Forge is now. And then there's Offbeat. There's been the list goes on and on.
Yeah.
There's been so many different coffee shops. How do you think that's affected maybe the knowledge that your customer base now has of coffee, and do they come in a little bit more aware of like things they like and things they don't like, or is it still sort of a new learning experience as you're meeting people that maybe have never been there before
Mhm.
or don't frequent local coffee shops? They frequent Starbucks or they frequent Dunkin'.
Yeah. I would say, side note, me and Christy from Honest Coffee, we're like BFFs. Like she's just the best.
Yes,
That's
I've had Christy on the podcast 3 times,
yeah.
and
She's so
I
much
saw
fun.
her Monday. She's amazing.
She really is. That is one thing that I wanted people to know right from the get go is we're not in competition. We're
No,
all different. We all
for
offer
sure.
something different. And so if you're in the mood for this or that or whatever, you can go to that place. Like I actually had my own hiding place at the Alchemy one at Low Mill.
Alchemy, yes, that's the
Yes,
one.
it
Okay,
was like my jam. Like
because it was one of the. It was like I guess the influx of these new coffee
yeah,
shops. It was one of the first. Like it was like y'all have been around for a while, but then when that big influx happened, when then you see half a dozen coffee shops open,
exactly.
they kind of were
They were.
that spot, especially for downtown.
Yeah. It was close enough to downtown to for people to really, really be able to
Mhm.
get in there quickly.
And it had its own little staircase from the outside. You could
Exactly.
easily get up to it.
Yep, anytime you wanted. And so I had my little hiding spot in there. I had a usual drink too
Yeah.
instead they started knowing that. So it I would say Huntsville growing in the coffee community, we started doing latte art throwdowns. I think our store was maybe the second one in town that did the latte art throwdown.
Mm.
And then we were all trying to navigate that. And coffee is just so different for everybody that, people who love Starbucks love
Yeah.
Starbucks. People love Dunkin', totally fine. I mean, we're closed on Sunday. Somebody's got to get coffee somewhere,
Yeah, that's true.
But I would just say the Huntsville community has just grown so well with community with each other, with each coffee shop. Like I frequent other coffee shops on a regular basis, and I feel like I'm an old person here, old coffee shop in Huntsville, which is kind of was my dream back in the day. I was like, I want to be one of the faces of top coffee in Huntsville
Yeah.
because we don't just offer coffee, we offer more than just coffee.
For sure. And I look at your website. I think within the first year or two of y'all opening, you were actually you won like best coffee shop or in
Yeah.
North Alabama.
Yeah.
And then you were on a WH&T poll too for coffee.
Yeah.
And so like that happening so quickly after you opened, then now think that was 17 years ago.
Yeah.
And to see how far coffee has come, like you said, I think though people from the outside can definitely think of all these coffee shops like, I can't believe there's another coffee shop opening. How are they going to be able to sustain themselves? But everyone has their own brand. Like
Right.
Roosters is its own entity. Angels
Exactly.
Island is its own like Honest. Like I mean, we had Offbeat. I mean, there's been so many of them, but they all have a different feel. Like it's like
Exactly.
if I'm in a certain place in town and I want a coffee, I know that like there's probably 2 or 3 coffee shops near. I can go to Gold Sprint today. I can go
Right.
to this today. I can go here today. I want to go back to the house and I want to work somewhere. I'll go to Angels Island or I'll go to Roosters or I'll go wherever. And they all have something unique to offer, and your perspective is so unique. Do y'all still do your art wall? Talk a little bit about that and how that has helped kind of bridge a community with coffee.
Yeah. So we started doing art and music regularly. And the reason to do that, I chose to do that, is my sister was an artist in Fiji, and she was very, very good. And she just didn't have anywhere to put her stuff, after she was done with a piece. She joined like an art show and an art company, and so she got to put up some pieces there. But the same thing with my brother. He was in a small band, a garage band, and he had nowhere to really play. So I was like, I want somebody to be able to, a teenager or somebody who just wants somebody to hear their stuff. We currently don't do music anymore right now, but the art wall is just fantastic. It's beautiful. It's always changing. And then each artist gets to like display themselves in a way that they maybe don't usually get to. And then our customers get to see all the different types of art, and then they get all their information from the artists. And so then they can like reach out to them for like custom pieces and
Wow.
stuff. So that to me is really, really fun. I love being able to see new art. I mean, we had new art just this past week, and I walked in, I was like, oh, there's new art. I was like, this is cool.
Yeah. So you mentioned earlier that, when you first started, you were working all day from open to
Yes.
close. Now, 17 and a half years in, what does your day-to-day life look like owning Angels Island?
Other than being a taxi driver for my children every day, I'm generally in the coffee shop at least once a day, whether I'm just running in to get something or running in to do something, and I have to run in if I don't have time because I always get stopped, whether it be an employee or a customer.
Yeah.
They just love to talk to me. So I love working behind the counter, but I have to be very cautious about working behind the counter because people will talk my ear off and then I don't do my job. So it's a lot of fun. Generally, I work a couple like morning shifts, and then I get my, rusty shoes off, and I have a lot of fun. And then it's just short shifts. So that way afterwards I can just sit at the table and do some work and then be able to chat with people.
Yeah. And so if thinking through this 17-year journey with owning your own coffee shop, being an entrepreneur, being a small business owner, is there a piece of advice or a lesson that you wish you would have known when you first started that it maybe took a few years and you've learned now that you would maybe not necessarily give that advice to someone listening that wants to start their own business, but maybe it's something to avoid that you did that you're like, just don't do this or don't do that. Is there any sort of lesson that you've learned?
Quite a few lessons. I was very young and immature, so I was kind of a butt to some people sometimes. And I was tired. I was working there open to close, I was just like fed up. I didn't have much of a life. But one thing that I love about the coffee shop is anytime I hire a new person, I say, hey, what do you want to do in life? And a lot of them have told me they want to open coffee shops. And I'm like, I'm an open book. I'm here to help you. And it's generally sad sometimes because people aren't willing to do the work that I personally did, like open to close.
Yeah.
And even my high school friends, like when I'd be like chatting with them online because we were slow, they'd be like, why don't you have your employee just work and you go do whatever? I'm like, it doesn't work that way. Like people just don't understand. You have to put your sweat and tears in it financially, but also it wouldn't be what it is now if I wasn't working all the time. But it also wouldn't be what it is now if I didn't allow my employees and their wonderful minds to give me their thoughts and advice on how to better this situation or how to have this kind of special, like it is a team effort at the coffee shop. And that's one thing that I did learn the hard way is just, it's my store. Like nobody's going to change it. And it's not about that. It's like, they have a great idea.
Yeah. It's like, I think it's that feedback is great. And it is easy as a small business owner or entrepreneur to kind of get this tunnel vision where it's like anyone that's contradicting what I think should be done is like, they just want me to fail. When in reality, it's like, maybe that's a good idea. And maybe it's not, but like being open and willing to take the advice or take the criticism or take the lesson or whatever it might be and be open ear to it can definitely go a long way. Either it's a way that you want to go in that direction, or it's like, I really don't like that idea, I'm not going to do that, but thank you so much. And you're able to kind of like balance the two.
Yeah. And that's a big lesson I learned is also the response. You don't want to be rude and disrespectful to their idea. So I learned how to articulate, let me think about that.
Yeah.
And then how to come back around to explain it to them, whether it be positive or negative, in a way that wasn't dampening their idea or their mind, because words can change people. And that's another thing that I've really learned about the shop is all my employees come from different backgrounds, whether it be trauma background. That is, I would say out of the last 7 years, that's something that we've really focused on is if somebody's having a bad day or they're just not working quite right on their, what they usually do, it's like, hey, let's approach them in a different way. We learn how to talk to each employee differently and how to approach them differently based off of how they've kind of been brought up and how they like to be, talked to, because some people don't like confrontation, and that's something we teach at the shop. You have to learn how to have confrontation, whether it be you're 16 telling a 22-year-old who just started working here what to do. How do you
interacting with customers is, customer service is a huge, it's an undertaking for anybody, especially if confrontation is not something you like. Not that you have to be confrontational to your customers, but you get people that are having a bad day, not only that are working there as employees, but also as customers that come in, that go through the drive-through, that maybe just for whatever reason aren't the happiest about anything. And so you're kind of though you're giving them their coffee and giving them their caffeine and their morning breakfast and their sandwich and their muffin or whatever it might be, there's definitely that level of stress that anyone at any time could be dealing with.
Exactly.
And it doesn't necessarily take a bad circumstance to make them go off the edge, but it can definitely not make the situation better.
Yeah.
And so I know too, a big part of Angels Island is partnering with a lot of businesses locally, like Mason-Dixon and other like being able to offer a bunch of different things. How has over the years, as Huntsville's continued to grow and add other small businesses, have you found ways to integrate their business with your business?
I would say it's really more of like a customer demand. Again, our customers have a lot to say about whether it be our new hire, if they made their latte right, or whether it be, I think you should do this, or I think you should do that. Like we always listen, we always navigate. Is this a good idea? Financially, is it going to be helpful? Is it going to be easy duplicated to the new hire that comes in? So we try to make things simple as best as we can, but I would say working with local has been so much fun. And currently we don't do as much with like Mason-Dixon currently, but what's really fun is our espresso cart that we have. I'm not sure if you looked at and saw that, but we have an espresso cart, a mobile one.
Okay.
And so we wheel it into a wedding just last weekend. We did a wedding at Botanical Gardens. A couple months before that, we went to like Boeing. They had like employee appreciation day.
Okay.
And so we just roll into the lobby and they'd all come down. But what we saw, like, that is so exciting. Other than just the wedding, that's fun.
Yeah.
But they all come down and they conversate, and it's just Angels Island Coffee, the coffee community and connection, all like in their office.
That's
So they're
cool.
all conversating in a different way than they would. Their attitude changes from when they order
Yeah.
it. And same thing for weddings. Like Mason, Dix, and I, we work pretty often together for different weddings.
Yeah.
So they'll do food and we'll do stuff. One time the electrical wasn't working. And so they were like, hey, do you need a generator? We have a generator. It's just
That's
working
cool.
together.
Yeah.
It's just so much fun because we get excited to work with Chupper Time, Mason Dixon, you know, any other person that is at a wedding or an event that we're all there. We're just like all struggling and all hustling together, and
Yeah.
we can just relate and understand. And so I love being able to be with other people that are local, just because some of them I don't get to know, and then we're like, hey, oh, you know, we
Yeah.
haven't been to your place, and let's check it out. So it's cool. It's so much fun.
Yeah. And so was the mobile cart something that came out of like a customer demand, or like how did this idea of saying like let's see if this works, was it some
Yeah.
one of your customers say like I wish you did this, or did an employee, or did it kind of come up, did you kind of come up with it yourself?
So I would say after we survived the overpass, um, well, no, I guess it was before the overpass. Yeah, it was just before the overpass when the food truck scene really got rampant in Huntsville.
Yeah.
It was like right at the beginning, we were like, let's buy a trailer. This is a really good entry into, do we want another store or do we not?
Okay.
Can we handle it? Can we not? So we got a trailer, and we got it all fixed up, and we hustled at these food truck rallies. I haven't been to one in a while, but we hustled. Like
Yeah.
it's a huge hustle to be able to make the money to cover the fee just to be there.
Yeah.
And so what we noticed after that first year, I had another employee who could drive the trailer because I couldn't just do it all the time.
Mm.
But the fees for places just started going up, and it kind of was pushing people out because they only wanted like the top food trucks in
Gotcha.
town. So we all kind of got booted, but then they came up with like a food truck, you know, corral. It was kind of like this Lincoln Mill business. Like it was a whole office space where people could just go and have food, and food trucks could roll in and roll out, and people could just enjoy their, you know, work or whatever. But it did not work out very well. I mean, it's not even there anymore. But we hustled at the low mill, like concerts on the dock. Like we like unloaded our espresso cart. We had a mobile
Wow.
sink. We had a freezer, a fridge. I mean, we had an entire store and we hustled, but it was just too much work, and we weren't getting what we had hoped out of it. So we were lucky enough to sell it, but we kept the machine, and then we came up with the idea of what if we did this for like weddings and events.
Offices and companies
Yeah.
and stuff like that. Okay.
Yeah. So
Kind of just pivoted the initial idea and kind
yeah.
of figured out because I mean I think that's I've seen some coffee food trucks that still kind of do that, like they'll pop up at this outside of Boeing or outside of Torch or outside of
Right.
whatever, but being able to like kind of have that more personal experience that when you're able to roll inside the building and actually be
Right.
able to offer it, because you just never know if it's going to be 100 degrees outside or if it's going to
Exactly.
be pouring down rain or if it's going to be
Exactly.
freezing. I mean, it could be all three at the same time
It
too.
really could.
So
it's Huntsville, right?
yeah, it's Huntsville. So being
Yeah.
able to roll in and being able to see these people that maybe, have never visited Angels Island before because they live in Madison or they live in Decatur, but they work at Boeing or they work at whatever other research park company you want to throw out there. I bet it's really kind of expanded the clientele that you've been able to see
Exactly.
for Angels Island.
Yeah, and what's cool about that is depending on where we are, the customers that come to the counter, they're like, "Oh, do I have to pay for it?" I'm like, "No, your company paid for it," and they get really, really excited.
Yeah.
But then they're always like, "I've always wanted to try it,"
Mm.
and then they get hooked, and then they start coming on a regular basis. But I will say, to answer your question, it was a customer who gave me the first idea to do it because
Okay.
she asked if we could do coffee for her daughter's wedding.
Wow.
And so I tried.
And that
to
was
figure-
early on, like
That
in Bill's.
was early on.
Okay,
Yeah, I
wow.
did. Yeah, I remember I carried the machine myself inside. It was so
And like
heavy.
set up it at the table
Yeah,
and
set
had
it
all
up
the
in
like a
a-
fridge, a mini fridge with you or something.
It was in a church kitchen, so it was
Okay,
very
so you had
tiny.
refrigeration and stuff like that.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
wow.
So it was. I still remember that to this day. I totally forgot about it till now, but that has just been a blessing to be able to get ideas from people, really kind of sit on it and see if it's really working out. But being able to be mobile with our coffee shop and bring stuff, bring our coffee to people is really, really exciting. I
Yeah,
super love that idea because we're not there for too long, but we make an impact.
for
And it's
sure.
like another imprint into Huntsville of who we are and why we're here.
Yeah. So I mean, thinking through this journey, has there ever been a moment, or is there even the potential that this will happen of opening up a second location for Angels Island?
I don't want to say no because, God is funny and, different things might happen. But currently, I would not be interested in it because the espresso cart is kind of my big focus right now
Yeah.
because
It's just continuing to grow that.
yeah,
Yeah.
we're supposed to be doing something for the cybersecurity thing that they're having at the VBC in August,
Wow.
and it's like a 2.5, 3 day. We've worked with several companies, but all these other companies are trying to poach us for the days, and so we got a new contract with another company, but I really just want to push that and try to get
And like, I
into
guess maybe, and like, I guess, is there the potential of even having more than one
yeah,
to kind of
see,
like being able to
yeah,
cover more ground at the same? Because like, I mean,
yeah,
I would assume there's probably that conflict of interest where like you'll have this event and then you want to be at this place at this time. You're like,
yeah,
can't be at two places at the same time.
yeah,
But two carts is probably a little bit more affordable than a new space to
exactly.
have in Huntsville. So
Yeah, I currently have 3 small espresso machines
okay, for
that
travel.
are commercial. They're not like the house kind. They are
Yeah.
like you could use it for a coffee shop. Um, and so I do have the capability of doing that. One exciting thing that I love is that like for Christmas, a corporation hired us out to make coffee for all of their staff. And they had Shepherd Time catering there. I mean, it was just an amazing, huge event. It was 450 people. And
Goodness.
we served with 2 machines, 450 people, and some refills in the span of 2 hours and 15 minutes.
Wow.
And that's only possible because we have these commercial espresso
Yeah.
machines, and I had 5
And
baristas.
do
And we
you
were just
typically
hustling.
have like when you do like the mobile option, do you typically have like, like these are the three drinks you get? It's either like a latte, Americano, or like it's like
Yeah,
or is it
they
or
can
is it kind
kind
of
of choose.
customizable
Yeah, it's
depending on the
definitely
event?
it's definitely customizable. Like the wedding that we just had, the husband and wife, they come into the shop regularly. So they kind of made their own name for their drink. So it was like the
Okay.
bride's
That's
drink and the
cool.
groom's drink, but I couldn't even remember it because it had little cute names.
That's
So
cool.
we were able to like get coffee sleeves with that name on it,
Oh,
for them
wow.
with their date on it. And then they got, custom cups because they wanted to do that. So it was really cool because it's just like a huge imprint in each person who's come up there because they can keep their stuff,
Yeah.
but also for the bride and groom to be like, that's our drink.
Yeah, that's cool.
That
That's
is
awesome.
super fun. I love it.
Yeah. And so thinking as we're recording this, I mean, we have half the year left of 2024,
Yeah.
approaching up your 18 years of operation.
Hmm.
What are some future things? I guess we talked about that with the cart. But if anyone's listening and they do actually, want to find out more about the cart,
Right.
want to find out more, just visit you, learn more about you online. Where can they find your stuff? Where can they visit all of that good stuff?
So our website is angelsislandcoffee.net. And if you Google it, it's at the top.
Okay.
So it'll have all our tags on there. But
Perfect.
Instagram and Facebook, I would say we're most present on Instagram.
Yeah.
But we're on both because
You kind
some
of,
people just
yeah.
can't switch
No,
over, and
yeah.
they've been there since the
Yeah.
beginning.
And it works and
Yeah,
it's not broken.
it's
So why
not
fix it?
broken. Yeah, it absolutely. And then calling the coffee shop, and we have brochures, and we have like on our website if they want to do catering stuff or if they want to do the cart, they're able to just submit a request, and then we can get back to them.
Perfect. And we'll have all the information in the episode notes. If you want to find out more about Angels Island and visit all the links, we'll have all of that there. But I appreciate you taking the last little bit, talking about your
Absolutely.
business and the journey of opening up your own coffee shop. Continue to look forward to what the next 18 years are going to look like for Angels Island and the continued growth you'll have in Huntsville. But I appreciate you so much for being here.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.